you view all of the COVID policies only through the prism of if you lock down the world for eternity, then you can mitigate the spread of the virus. So it's a singular variable that you're trying to optimize rather than what the average 3-day-old pigeon should know, which is that the world is made up of multifactorial phenomena. So if you lock up children for 3 years, there will be downstream consequences of that. Well,
Right.
now suddenly people said, what? Multifactorial? We never knew this in medical school. We didn't know about this. We only knew about mitigation of, right? I mean, it's literally at that level of imbecility. But I studied applied mathematics, so I knew that the world is made up of multivariate phenomena, multiple variable. So when it comes to immigration, yes, we're a country of immigrants, but we're a country of legal immigrants. And the immigration process has to be non-parasitic, meaning
Yes.
that for me granting you entry into my society, the net benefit to my society must outweigh the costs to my
You
society.
don't chant
That's why
death
an
to America in the friggin'
exactly,
streets. It's
exactly.
bananas.
Exactly. So once you come into the country and you bring in, hey, when we become majority here, it's going to be gravity-based conversion therapy for LGBTQ people, meaning off from the highest buildings, then we don't need you here. If it's death to all Jews,
Right.
then we don't need you here.
Right.
So anybody is welcome in as long as the net benefits outweigh the costs, as long as we can vet you, as long as any values that are contrary to the foundational values of the host society are not incongruent with each other, then come in, my brother, and please contribute to society. Otherwise, don't
Bring the
let the door
food,
hit your
bring the
ass on the way.
fashion, right? Like, okay, but then how? Okay, so great, you've single-handedly solved immigration.
I did.
Why can and it was very easy, very made perfect sense to me.
Because it's not empathetic.
What is empathy actually? Is it just always self-serving? What is this emotion, and what is the evolutionary purpose of it? And then
Oh,
subsequently,
you got
how did it get dysregulated?
beautiful. So let me step back and explain two levels of explanation when it comes to evolutionary theory. Okay. So in most scientific explanations operate at what's called the proximate level. Proximate level is explaining the how and the what of a phenomenon. So much of science, 99.9% of science operates at the proximate level. You want to understand how diabetes works? Here is how it works. What are the factors that increase the likelihood of you having a spike in your sugar? So it explains the how and the what. It's the mechanistic explanation of a phenomenon. There's a second layer that almost no person knows about, including most scientists. That's called the ultimate level of an explanation. Ultimate level doesn't mean ultimate, it's superior. It means it explains the Darwinian why. Why did the mechanism evolve to be of that form? I could I could address empathy from a proximate perspective, or I could address empathy to your question, what is the evolutionary reason why we would have evolved our emotional system in general and this particular emotion in particular? Well, empathy is part of the group of emotions that you would need if you're a social species, right? Because part of being a social species, for you and I to have a meaningful interaction, we have to have a process called theory of mind. Theory of mind allows me to put myself in your mind so that I can experience things through your eyes. And it is that process that then allows us to have meaningful interactions. By the way, autistic children don't have theory of mind. So one of the ways that you're able to diagnose a young child, you can't give a blood test to know if somebody has autism. So you usually administer to them a theory of mind test, which autistic children typically fail. So empathy, while distinct from theory of mind fits that rubric, which is there is a bunch of emotional systems that are needed if you're going to live in bands, one of which is empathy, right?
Okay.
But there are also dark emotions that are part of our evolutionary repertoire. So, for example, the opposite of, say, empathy, or forgiveness and so on, those positive emotions, is vengefulness, is revenge, right? Which itself has an evolutionary argument, right? Imagine if we didn't evolve the capacity to severely retaliate if there's been wrongdoing done to us. Then we would be completely parasitized by the other, right? Because they could do anything they want to me, and they would never have to fear me retaliating. So studying emotions from an evolutionary perspective yields all sorts of new insights that if you weren't coming from an evolutionary perspective, you would never tackle.
Immediately when you talked about the necessity of vengefulness, I thought about Jesus and turning the other cheek. Why would we, and an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Why would we try to root this out? Because I try to root it out of myself, to be honest. I think of that as a very low emotion, and I think of scenarios where I would not be unable to take revenge, like if somebody hurt my child. And I think that makes me less than to this day. So why is this like a part of most, I would imagine most religions, is trying to rise above that emotion?
Look, for example, when you say, and I talk, what I'm about to say, I discuss in the parasitic mind. When you hear the prescription, don't judge.
Keeping it real with Jillian Michaels.